Alrighty, today we're going to be causing trouble in Dark Souls because we're asking the question, can you beat Dark Souls with only a crossbow? So to do this, we're going to be starting with the Thief class. Now our gift is going to be Black Fire Bombs. We're going to be using those in just a second. And since we took the Thief class, we are going to get the Master Key to start. This is going to help us acquire a lot of the materials we're going to need to get the crossbow up to a plus 15 weapon. Now, I know a lot of this doesn't make sense right now, but that's okay. We're going to explain along the way. First up, the Asylum Demon. Now, I was going to just mod in a crossbow, but I figured this would be a little bit more legitimate. And there he goes. Now, before he actually dies, we're going to do a special glitch called Quit Out. This allows us to exit the game and then hop right back in, and as you notice, the Asylum Demon is still alive. And now, with that in mind, we will be able to come back later and kill them with a crossbow. We're going to pick up the key from Oscar here, who seems to have both keys for some reason. I still don't understand how that works, but we're just gonna roll with it. And there we go. Right out of the asylum. Well, we still have 30 bosses to go, but first,
I need a weapon.
Right this way.
We make our way through the undead burg, past the hollows, up the ladder, jumping over to the abandoned house, and grabbing our weapon. Behold, the light crossbow. It's an interesting weapon. The damage on this weapon is okay. Emphasis on okay at 310 damage at plus 15. The bolts do their own damage, which is added on top of the crossbow. So the type of ammunition that you use has some impact on the damage. There are 5 types of ammo: wooden, standard, heavy, sniper, and lightning bolts. Although that's physical damage, so later on in the game we're gonna see massive damage drop off. Not to mention, it doesn't scale with anything. In fact, the only damage boost that I can get is the red Tearstone ring and Power Within, which I didn't even bother to pick up till the end of the game anyways. The best of the church looking for the Ring of Favor and Protection, and Lothric to boot, but didn't find him there. I raced downstairs to make sure that Lothric hadn't spawned downstairs, and rip Firelink Shrine. Now, the keen-eyed among you might have noticed while I was discussing the weapon's stats, I was busy collecting the Firekeeper Soul, Titanite Shards, and Souls. And you would be right. See, I need to upgrade my weapon now, so that way I'm not hitting with a squirt gun. With that in mind, I need to test my newly upgraded plus 5 crossbow. Yeah, I'll take that. And what's more is, I'll spend the next couple of minutes taking on the Stray Demon. This boss is very similar to the one upstairs, with a couple more attacks. What's worse is this arena is a little bit too tight for the new AoE attack, and that damage is looking kind of low. However, this boss was designed to be taken on during the middle of your run, not the second boss in. This fight right here took me about 14 minutes, but let me tell you, it was worth it. Both demons down, 1 Titanite slab. As I wanted to spend the 20k souls on ammo, I have to skip getting the doll for now. After some deliberation, I decided that I needed to upgrade my healing, because if I'm gonna be launching toothpicks, I might as well be able to take a few. With that in mind, the Catacombs is my next destination. As it turns out, this next fight can be difficult at this level, and the boss's gimmick actually plays into the moveset quite well. You see, Pinwheel spawns multiple clones of themselves and launch massive fireballs at you, which my character seems unfortunately allergic to. You can pick off some of these clones and then focus fire on the main Pinwheel, but when he gets to low health, well, yeah, that's a lot of Pinwheels. you'll need to dodge especially well here, and your best bet is to finish off the fight as quickly as possible. With Pinwheel turned into a local acupuncture patient, we now have access to the rite of kindling. The moon-like butterfly is next, and honestly, this is just mobile target practice at this point. This fight is actually really sad. But for some reason, you can't hit the boss when it lands for some reason. I'm certain Miyazaki is behind this. I then decided to pay the Tower Goblin a visit. What's up, Taurus Demon? You ready for your daily injections? What do I even say about this fight? It's just a joke at this point. I decided to take a break from the fighting to go talk to this man infatuated by the sun. Solera Vistara, eh? I remember that. I gotta admit, that sun feels so good. After a bit of sunbathing, it's time for some rooftop play. Considering all the bosses up to this point, this should be really easy. We're coming back to this one. My detour started with the Capra Demon. He makes a better door than he does a window, and the puppies aren't much better. The goal of the stairs, in this instance, isn't to plunge attack him, but it's actually to get him into the stagger animation. It's kind of hard to fight when you're recovering from your life choices. Wait, did I read the script right? Damn, that's a dark turn. Speaking of a dark turn, welcome to the depths. I decided to interrupt a butcher's business and life so that way I could acquire the large ember. Then proceed to slay the abomination in his basement. And one of my favorite bosses. I swear this boss looks very much like a put. Anyway, this boss really likes walls. Like, really likes walls, and will usually run straight into them most of the time. But in this case, it just decides to swipe at me like a credit card. This damage has got me concerned for some of the fights coming up. This won't come up to haunt me, right? Oh! This range, however, is perfection. Speaking of perfection, let's inject that chest. This was the first boss fight that I was nervous about, with the spider portion of the boss spamming lava at you, and her swinging her blade like she just don't care. I was concerned I was gonna be here for multiple attempts. And that may have been the case had she used her AoE attack. You see, she usually charges up slowly, and then blasts everything in a certain radius for a lot of health damage. But in this particular instance, I don't think I did enough poise damage to actually cause her to stagger and start the AoE attack. With the second spider down, we now get to ring the second bell. It's really strange how we're ringing this one first. To vent my frustration with the gargoyles, I decided to borrow some clothes for my next audition, only for Captain Noodles over here to get livid at me. I ran for my life and watched as he hopped up onto the edge, and the only thing I could do was mercifully end his existence. Man, Dark Souls can be a really messed up experience sometimes. With my detour to the underworld complete, I decided to enact some revenge on the gargoyles. The fire still hurts as bad as it did before, but my +6 crossbow does put in some work on this boss. I think taking a break from this fight was the right call, because the gargoyles definitely reacted differently in this particular fight, allowing me to bag that victory. Remember, sometimes it's okay to take a break. With the first bell run second, since Funhouse is now open to us, and with that brings many upgrades, mainly the 2 large Titanite shards from the chest and the 2 Titanite chunks from the giants. The giant fights are not that easy, not because they have a giant health pool, oh they do, but I feel so bad because they're adorable. Why do you hate me, Dark Souls? So, I have a confession to make. I've been sugarcoating the damage with these boss fights quite a bit because I've been able to outpace the boss's health pools with reasonable amounts of damage from the upgrade scaling. But the next couple of bosses are going to be a pain if I don't upgrade now. And since I don't have the Lord's Bowl, Mr. Red, White, and Plague won't give up the key to the seal. Not without a fight anyways. And I know that Ghost House is a death sentence. So what's a girl to do? Yes, your eyes aren't deceiving you. I am free aiming the crossbow. That's how desperate I am for upgrades at this point. After some upgrade materials from Sen's Fortress, about an hour of grinding for Titanite chunks, and the slab from the demon we slayed towards the beginning of our journey, we now have a plus 15 weapon that I'm eager to test out. Well, what do you know? There's an iron target waiting for me. 115 damage? That's not bad considering the fact that the Iron Golem has a high defense for almost anything that isn't magic. I tried to keep him over on the exposed edges, just in case I could drop him off the edge with the damage I was doing. Sadly, I don't think the crossbow does enough poise damage for that particular stunt. So, I put him out of his misery, and then I get flown to Erlondo. After investing in some parkour skills, we make our way to... Never mind the boss, it's time for some good old-fashioned revenge. This right here may be the toughest NPC fight in the entire game. A gank squad that is perfectly rounded to smoke you every single time. But they didn't account for my perfect strategy I came up with on the spot. Run up the stairs, lock on and fire, jump off the edge, and then fire again. It's a perfect strategy, works every time. After playing Ring Around the Bush with Lotric, he receives his just rewards of a good acupuncturist. A ring of favor and protection, and Firekeeper soul acquired. Now, we move on to the other part of Gank City, this time featuring Ornstein and Smo. I love how the script says orange, steam, and smell. How much Pinot Grigio did I have when writing the script? Okay, so first issue with this fight is that Ornstein's attack is tied to the frames. How or why that works, I have no idea, but it causes him to fly across the arena like Sonic. Other than that, playing Unlocked helps for visual awareness. Oh wait. Yeah, I'm using a crossbow that benefits heavily from lock-on. It's not all that bad, however. I did get hammered by Smo because I was caught lacking. On my second attempt, I attempted to use the pillars as cover from Executioner Smell. We're going with that, okay? I had way too much Pinot Grigio writing the script. I'm not going back and fixing it, okay? With strategic movement around the pillars, Ornstein and Smo fall to the acupuncturist. Yes, good morning, ma'am. Thank you for the large cereal bowl. I'm here for your 10 o'clock acupuncture appointment. Well, fudge sticks. Wait, why did the lights go out? This is not gonna be good, is it? Sorry, my acupuncture's on point. Fun fact about this boss, Dark Sun Gwendolyn is actually a trap. Has tentacles and hits like a dump truck. So what do? Waiting for the arrow attacks is crucial if you don't want a face full of Soul Sphere. And a long walk all the way back from Sen's Fortress to warp to the boss fight again. After enough patience and needles, Gwendolyn goes down. At the next point, I decided to take a break from the bosses and decided to take on some mini-bosses. A dragon here, a hydra here, a crystal golem who happens to be housing a princess. All in a day's work. I decided to pay Havel a visit and disrespect him accordingly. He does end up trying to smash me with his giant tooth, but somehow I survived. I guess it makes as much sense as being able to parry. Sometimes I just don't understand this game. You know what else I don't understand? This next boss. I just don't like this boss. I don't know of anyone who does. I don't want you to rest. I want you to die. Speaking of dying, this next room often gives me a lot of trouble. Especially the lava and all the strange attacks from Centipede. And I decided to do none of it and just give this Centipede a free lunch because he looked rather hungry. Unfortunately, he did not like the flavor. In fact, he despised it so much, he spat me out and then proceeded to phase out of reality. Rip Centipede. Ah, I can feel my blood pressure rising. The bed of chaos must be near. This boss has caused me so much pain in the past. I still remember the first time I took on this boss, thinking I needed Dragon Slayer arrows because the boss wouldn't take any damage otherwise. Anyway, let's take out the second tendril, and I hate this boss. It's not even satisfying to pop the little bug inside afterwards. This might be, in fact, the worst boss in all of Dark Souls. Remember how I said earlier I felt horrible about the giants? Well, I'm feeling my heartstrings again, and I think we all know what time it is. Not much to say here. Zip is using very basic attacks for this fight, and not jumping around the arena for once. The only thing I'm fighting here is my conscience. Half the time, I wonder if I'm actually the good girl in this fight. You know who's not good? The Four Kings. This normally consists of a DPS test. If you have enough damage to kill a boss in about 40 seconds or less, it's an automatic W. But would we really be here if I could do that? The Kings tend to fight one at a time, even when there are multiple on screen. The only exception usually being the occasional magic attack or a rare sword attack if you get too close. Speaking of magic attacks, you usually get a magical disc or an AoE attack. I got a little bit concerned at the end because I was missing some of my shots and I was running dangerously low on healing supplies. I think this was mostly in part because I was either free aiming or having to fight the camera. It seems really consistent here versus other fights. But hey, this couldn't possibly bite me later, right? I made my way back to the Northern Asylum to collect the doll I previously left behind, then proceeded to reenact my dreams of becoming Mario by jumping directly into a painting. I'm sure glad all the bosses are visible and can be locked on. Yeah, so this fight just became a whole lot harder. You can only tell where she is because of the footprints in the snow. And even at that, you can't gauge the distance. The best you can hope for is to line up the shot, fire, and dodge. Sometimes you'll get lucky and hit her, and sometimes you get a face full of sight. Remember how I said the crossbow doesn't do damage, specifically poise damage? Well, that's the type of damage you need in order to break her invisibility. It's like you, Dark Souls. Sometimes the bolts will stick out of her and alleviate this problem, as long as the bolt remains visible. Hint hint, it does not stay visible for very long. Sorry, waifu. You have been booped. I decided to break into the Duke's archive, persuade the Golem to part with his DLC key, and proceed to be sent to jail for being a naughty girl. Aim the crossbow and... this is a problem. So, yeah, this is where the run kind of dies. See, without performing the dupe, skip, or wrong warping into the kiln of the first flame, we cannot actually beat the game with a light crossbow. But at this point, we've come so far, I just want to see what this crossbow can do. After dealing with the jailer, we break a crystal, make a giant lizard angry, and proceed to launch ourselves into a tentacle. This allows us to get a lot of damage in and not get hit by all the crystals forming in the floor. This is actually kind of helpful because her curse is definitely going to be an issue for this fight, whereas the damage isn't too bad to deal with. This boss is basically a beanbag at this point without vulnerability. I've already dug a grave with my sanity for this video, so I might as well meet the lord of it. Yes, that was an awful joke. You know what else is an awful joke? These toxic swords. This is one of those fights I have almost zero experience with, besides the DLC, but we'll get there in a minute. So long as you don't venture too far into the arena, most of the bigger skeletons do not engage. Which means you're welcome to hide under Nito as he blows everyone up, including yourself, but at this point I'd rather be blown to bits than chopped up by skeletons. Nito's gonna have to settle for bolts though. Alrighty, it's DLC time. Our first contender is the Sanctuary Guardian. Flying lion, lots of lightning, spiky tail, you know, the works. There's only a few attacks that you can punish, mainly the wing wave attack and the swoop attack. As far as bosses go, the health pool isn't much larger than Nito's, but the resistances are kind of concerning. You can still take a bolt to the face though. There is somebody who can stand up to me though. All hail Arcturus. This is where the rubber meets the road. Health pools are starting to become staggering, and the damage output is falling off, even with a plus 15. Still, the back and forth battle can be won with patience. Wait, what are you doing? Stop that. This is where the boss fight becomes insane. You see, Arcturus can buff himself, granting him the ability to hit like a tank. At this point, you're just gonna have to wait for opening, dodge his relentless attacks. And honestly, this battle makes me think of Bloodborne, the way you have to constantly dodge and attack at the right moment. The enemies never giving up their fury, which is not something I can say for the other bosses. They tend to be more docile and defensive. This is the first time in the run that I actually felt truly challenged. I just felt frustrated with the gargoyles. Well fought, Arcturus. Can't say that I'm excited for the next boss, Manus. Always been the bane of my existence. I remember the first time that I tried to beat this boss, and I knew nothing about the Silver Pendant, and had to defeat him with nothing but raw determination. And even now, I still don't know his moveset well enough to avoid taking tons of damage. And that yo-yo arm is causing me mental distress. Normally I'd have insight as to what this boss is doing, but that's not what's happening here. I'm actually learning in this particular